You've just listened to Late Night Tales by Sly and Robbie. Welcome to the second part of this four-part story, The White City, written by Patrick Neate and read by me, Brian Blessed. Part 2. Baby Lonnie. Philippe trudged down into the White City with a heart that was heavier than his hunger. The citizens had already lit a fire in the main corridor, where the ogres lit theirs so they didn't risk discovery, and their faces were all expectant, especially the snotty-nosers like Venus, Anise, and Ribs. When they saw the king's meagre supplies, therefore, some of them were sort of angry, but most were just too starvacious for such tantrums, and their eyes stared wet and wistful into the blaze as they hugged their knees to their chests. Philippe tried to make the best of it. He pointed to the drum they'd torn from the innards of one of the new white structures the previous up. Its steel sparkled in the firelight. "We'll boil it all in that," he announced, all defiant. "A little something for everyone. Besides, I'll do without. I don't need it." As usual, Coco played chef, his expert fingers stripping off any rot or fungus without wasting a morsel. As the cooking smells thickened the atmosphere around them, the mood improved a little, and even the smallest smooths began to jabber, jostle, and joke. While they ate and Philippe smoked a cig, Chinky sidled up to him. She offered him her plate, made from a torn metal sheet, and he took a handful of grub gratefully. "This can't go on, Majesty," she muttered. "You got a plan?" "We gotta work Electric Mountain." "You going to deal with baby Lonnie?" she exclaimed. You can't trust him at all, remember?" Philippe stared at her. Of course he remembered. After all, it was him who'd sent his buddy into exile. It had happened not long after Philippe's predecessor, Queen Karala, had vanished. At the time, there were 4 senior smooths who might have taken over: Philippe, Coco, Randa, and baby Lonnie. Philippe and Lonnie were best buds and the front-runners, but it was Philippe that everyone wanted. While Lonnie may have been the funniest smooth of them all, he had a sharp tongue that crossed over to cruelty too often. Philippe, on the other hand, was unanimously popular, notably fair, and worked harder than anybody. Trouble was, Lonnie didn't take it so well, and he didn't talk to Philippe for 2 full cycles at least. Philippe was kind of hurt. But what was he going to do? Soon, baby Lonnie was trying everything he could to make life difficult for the new king, questioning his cause and starting arguments at any opportunity. Then he began to spread the rumour that Philippe was being strung along by Louis, and the citizens were being done out of their due. Finally, he even dropped a heavy motor off the top of a skyscraper that only missed the king by a whisper. He said it was an accident, of course, and burst into tears, but only Philippe, who had good reasons to want to, really believed him. None of these, however, was the reason for his exile. The White City had few rules. In fact, aside from minor principles established through practice, there was really only rule number 1, and it was this: you gotta look after the White City. And what this meant was that every citizen had to bring their scavengings to the collective stash at the break-up of Oop for the monarch to barter with Louis for the cycle's food, and nobody was allowed to bargain on their own. When you got down to it, this was a simple necessity. Otherwise, after all, the snotty-nosers, who barely knew the meaning of work, would never have got any grub. It was a rule so simple and so necessary that nobody even thought about it, nor spoke about it, let alone broke about it. Not before baby Lonnie. It was after supper, one up, when the smooths were just getting down to graft, that someone spotted him, sidling off into the shadows and up the valley's gravel face towards the tarmac. Luckily, that someone was Chinky, and she was a smooth with smarts enough to find a partner to follow. So she and Coco saw the whole thing. The deal done with Negro, and the way baby Lonnie slid surreptitiously back into the White City, clutching a bag of baccy, a pair of sweet mangoes, and several sachets of sugar besides. When they divulged their discovery, the smooths who circled the fire were horrified. At first, Lonnie denied everything, and he turned to Philippe with pleading eyes and said, "You don't believe them, do you, Majesty?" And Philippe said, "Sure." And when Chinky produced the bag of booty as evidence, Lonnie's attitude turned upside down, and his expression twisted in a sinister sneer. "So what?" He spat the words like pips. "So what you gonna do about it?" At the very sight of his face, all contorted like that, a few of the snotty-noses began to bawl. Some of the smooths picked up pipes and tools. They wanted to beat Baby Lonnie all the way to death and over the other side right then and there. Others said they should truss him up with ropes and string and leave him out for the ogres. But it was Philippe who had to make the judgment. Philippe couldn't look his former friend in the face as he said it. "You're banished. You're no citizen. Get out and never come back." Lonnie begged him. "What am I going to do for grub? Am I going to live on my own?" But he was dragged out of the White City that very up and told he'd get a good kicking if he ever showed his face again. In the cycles that followed, Baby Lonnie was seen sniffing around the city boundaries, and several smooths suspected he was thieving bits and bobs of grub while they worked, but Philippe turned a blind eye. After that, he was mostly spotted on Electric Mountain, and nobody knew what he could be doing up there. Electric Mountain was a new addition to the Smooth's landscape, and it was growing all the time. One cycle, the ogre's metal monsters had begun dumping jumbles of wires, circuits, and all sorts to the north of the city. And after that it was a regular occurrence, and Electric Mountain began to rise. Before Baby Lonnie, no Smooth had paid it much attention. After all, how could it compete with their orderly corridors of white skyscrapers? Nobody knew exactly when it started. Perhaps Lonnie just tried his luck with Louis sometime and said, "How about you see if the ogres want any of this stuff?" or something like that. But slowly the White City realized that the exiled Smooth, who'd broken rule number 1, was now doing deals with Negro. They were good deals, too, for veggies, sure, but bread and other grub as well. In fact, this coincided with Louis's loss of interest in the White City scavengings, not that anybody made a connection. And the defections soon began. First to go was Randa. Rumilo soon after that. It seemed that on the Electric Mountain, Lonnie let them do their own bargainings with Louis in an all-smooths-for-themselves sort of system. Chinky said that's why they won't let any of the snotty-noses join them. She was right, too. When Anise tried to approach Electric Mountain, Randa threw stones at her from the summit. Once, when the White City was especially hungrified, Philippe had attempted to speak to Baby Lonnie, perhaps to try to get some kind of grub. But they threw stones at him, too, and chased him away. Now, a short step away from the other Smooths who were preparing for the bulk of the Up's work, Philippe was staring at Chinky. She'd never seen his eyes burn so wild before. "You really gonna deal with Baby Lonnie?" she said. "You don't mind me saying, Majesty, but you've always been too soft before." "Yeah," Philippe said quickly. "I'm gonna deal with him."